The escrow office smelled like fresh paint and new beginnings. I walked in expecting to sign paperwork for my graduate school enrollment. My husband Derek had insisted on handling the administrative details while I finished my shift at the hospital. Instead, I found him seated at a conference table next to a woman with glossy black curls cascading over her shoulders. She wore a dress too elegant for a Tuesday afternoon, and her hand rested possessively on his arm. The escrow officer smiled warmly at them. "Congratulations on your first home purchase. This is such an exciting milestone for you both." My brain struggled to process the words. "First home. You both." Derek's eyes met mine, and for one brief second, I saw panic flash across his face before it hardened into something cold. The woman turned, finally noticing me standing frozen in the doorway. Her lips curved into a smirk that made my stomach drop. She showed up. Awkward. I looked at the papers spread across the table, at the check sitting prominently in the center. The routing number jumped out at me like a scream. I knew those digits. I'd memorized them years ago when my father set up my college fund, the account he'd built for me since I was 5 years old. My name is Kira Dalton. And that money was mine. What is this? My voice came out shaky, barely audible. Derek stood slowly, straightening his jacket. "Kira, you're overreacting. Let's discuss this at home. That's my college fund." I pointed at the check with a trembling finger. "That's the account my father left me. You used it to buy a house." The woman, his mistress I now understood, leaned back in her chair with infuriating casualness. "It's marital property, sweetie. Legally, he can use it however he wants." The escrow officer looked uncomfortable, shuffling papers unnecessarily. "I should give you folks some privacy." "No," I said firmly, surprising myself. "I want to see those documents. Right now." Derek's jaw tightened. "Kira, stop making a scene. We'll talk about this later." "Show me the paperwork," I repeated, my voice growing stronger. The officer hesitated, then slid a folder toward me. I flipped through pages of legal text until I found the purchase agreement. The down payment amount matched my father's fund exactly. $73,000. Money Dad had saved by working double shifts for 18 years. Money meant for my education, my future, my dreams. "It's marital property, Kira," Derek said coldly. "You don't own anything." I looked at him. This man I'd married 3 years ago, who'd held me at my father's funeral, who'd promised to honor Dad's legacy. And I realized I was looking at a stranger. I drove home in a daze, my hands shaking so badly I had to pull over twice. My phone rang constantly. Derek calling, texting. His tone shifting from defensive to mocking with each message. "You're being dramatic. It's our money, technically. Don't embarrass yourself over this." When I finally reached our apartment, his suitcase was gone from the closet. Drawers hung open, half empty. He'd planned this. He'd known I'd find out and had already moved his things out. My phone buzzed one final time. "You ruined the surprise. We'll talk when you calm down." Surprise. He'd called stealing my inheritance a surprise. I sank onto the carpet, surrounded by the ghost of our life together. The couch we'd picked out together. The photos from our wedding where I'd believed every promise he'd made. The coffee table where he'd kissed me goodbye that morning like everything was normal. How long had he been planning this? How long had she been in his life? How many times had I talked about finishing my degree while he smiled and nodded, knowing he was spending my future on building one with someone else? I couldn't cry. The shock was too deep, the betrayal too massive. I just sat there in the growing darkness, feeling my entire world crumble into dust. The pounding on my door started at 7 the next morning. I'd barely slept, spending the night researching property law and divorce attorneys on my laptop. When I opened the door, Derek's mother stood there flanked by his 2 sisters, all wearing expressions of righteous judgment. "We need to talk about your behavior yesterday," his mother announced, pushing past me into the apartment. They arranged themselves on my couch like a tribunal. The oldest sister, Vanessa, spoke first. You embarrassed Derek in front of important business contacts. That woman works with him. That woman is his mistress, I said flatly. And he stole my college fund to buy her a house. His mother waved dismissively. Don't be dramatic. It was marital money. He had every right to use it for investment purposes. Investment purposes. He bought a house with another woman. The younger sister, Bridget, sighed like I was being intentionally difficult. You're not supporting his happiness. Good wives adapt and compromise. I stared at them in disbelief. You want me to support him buying a house with his mistress? It was in his possession, Vanessa said coldly. So legally, it's his to use as he sees fit. You need to stop making this difficult and accept reality. Something snapped inside me. Get out. Excuse me, his mother said. Get out of my apartment. Now. They stood, huffing with indignation. At the door, his mother turned back. You're going to regret making enemies of this family, Kira. I closed the door in her face and locked it. I went to the bank that afternoon, still wearing yesterday's clothes, my eyes swollen from finally crying. The account manager, Mr. Patterson, took one look at me and ushered me into a private office. I need to see the complete transaction history for my college fund, I said, voice hoarse. All withdrawals, transfers, everything. He typed silently, his expression growing increasingly concerned as information populated his screen. Finally, he printed several pages and slid them across the desk. Ms. Dalton, I'm required to inform you that this account was established in your legal name only by your father. According to our records, no authorized signatures were ever added. My heart started pounding. What does that mean? It means any withdrawals should have required your explicit consent and signature. He pointed to the most recent transfer, the $73,000. This authorization has your husband's signature, not yours. The room tilted. That's fraud. Mr. Patterson leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. I'm not a lawyer, Ms. Dalton. But I will say this, you may have more power in this situation than you think. And I'd advise you to speak with an attorney before your husband realizes what I just told you. I left the bank with copies of everything, my mind racing. The account was in my name. Only my name. Derek had forged authorization to steal my money. And he'd used it to buy property. Property that might legally belong to me. She appeared at my door 2 days later. All expensive perfume and cruelty. The mistress stood in my hallway like she owned it. Her designer sunglasses pushed up into her perfect hair. I'm Cassidy, she said as if I'd asked. We should talk woman to woman. We have nothing to discuss. I started to close the door, but she put her hand against it. You're not getting that house. Fighting this will only make you look pathetic and desperate. Derek is moving on, and you should too. I stood my ground. That house was bought with my money. Money my father saved for me. Not for Derek, and certainly not for you. She laughed, the sound sharp and mean. It's cute that you think that matters. Derek explained everything to me. Marital property laws, community assets. You don't have a leg to stand on legally. Then she made her first mistake. Besides, I'm the one who pushed him to use that stupid college fund. It was just sitting there gathering dust while you kept putting off school. At least now it's doing something useful. My phone was recording in my pocket. Every word. You pressured him to steal from me? Steal is such an ugly word. He redirected funds. There's a difference. She smiled. I'd get used to losing if I were you. It's going to happen a lot in the coming months. She turned and walked away, her heels clicking confidently on the tile floor. I closed the door and saved the recording immediately, labeling it with the date and time. Her arrogance had just given me evidence. My friend Taylor worked as a paralegal and had recommended her boss, a property attorney named Mr. Holloway who specialized in fraud cases. His office was modest but professional, lined with law books and framed credentials. I sat across from him and explained everything, my voice breaking occasionally but staying steady. He listened without interrupting, taking occasional notes. When I finished, he asked for all my documentation. I handed over the bank statements, the property purchase agreement, the recording of Cassidy, and screenshots of Derek's messages. He reviewed everything in silence for what felt like hours. Finally, he looked up, and his expression was serious but determined. Ms. Dalton, based on what I'm seeing here, this property is legally tied to you, not your husband. My breath caught. What do you mean? The money used for the down payment came from an account in your name only. Your husband had no legal authority to access those funds. By law, any property purchased with stolen funds can be claimed by the rightful owner of those funds. So the house could be yours, entirely yours, but we'll need to prove fraud, document everything, and be prepared for an ugly fight. His family will resist, and this mistress will too. He leaned forward. If you want to fight this, I need everything. Every text message, every email, every voicemail. Screenshots, recordings, bank statements, anything that shows his intent and her involvement. Don't leave anything out. Can you do that? I thought about my father's calloused hands, about the double shifts he worked to build my future. Yes, I said firmly. I can do that. That night, I remembered Derek's old laptop, the one he'd replaced 6 months ago and left in our storage closet. He'd been careless about deleting files, always confident that I'd never go looking. I powered it on and started searching. In a folder labeled New Life, I found everything. Screenshots of wedding venues with notes like, perfect for the ceremony. A document titled Baby Names, with a neat list organized by gender. Budget spreadsheets showing my college fund listed explicitly as down payment source. And then, buried in his draft emails, I found the message that made my blood run cold. It was addressed to Cassidy but never sent, dated 3 weeks before the house closing. Once the house is in our name, I'll push Kira out. She'll be too hurt and confused to fight back properly. By the time she figures out what happened, we'll be untouchable. The divorce will be quick and clean. She won't have energy to contest anything after losing the house. Then we can start our real life together. I sat staring at those words for a long time. He'd planned my destruction methodically, step by step. He'd calculated exactly how much pain to inflict and when. This wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness. This was premeditated betrayal. I copied everything to an external drive, then to cloud storage, then emailed it to myself and Mr. Holloway. Evidence secured from every possible angle. No way for it to disappear. No way for him to claim I'd fabricated it. I cried until dawn, finally releasing the grief I'd been holding back. My father's voice echoed in my memory from the day he'd shown me the college fund paperwork. I was 16, and he'd sat me down at the kitchen table with papers spread between us. That fund is for your future, Kira. Not for anyone else. Not for any reason except your education and your dreams. I worked hard to build this for you because I believe in who you're going to become. He'd made me promise to protect it, to use it wisely, to never let anyone convince me it was anything other than mine. And I'd failed him. I'd married someone who saw that fund as an opportunity, who'd spent our entire marriage waiting for the right moment to steal it. Grief mixed with fury until I couldn't tell them apart anymore. But somewhere in those dark hours before sunrise, I made a decision. I would fight them. Not with spite or revenge, but with truth. I would drag every lie into the light, expose every manipulation, and take back what was mine. Not because I wanted the house specifically, but because letting them win meant betraying my father's trust a second time. And that I absolutely would not do. By the time the sun rose, my tears had dried. I felt hollow but determined, like steel that had been through fire and come out stronger. Derek's family launched their attack through social media first. His mother posted a long, dramatic status about how I'd stolen money from her son and was now punishing him for leaving an unhappy marriage. Comments flooded in from relatives and family friends I'd never met, calling me manipulative, vindictive, cruel. Screenshots appeared in my messages. people sharing the post, adding their own commentary about what a terrible wife I must have been. Vanessa posted photos from the closing, carefully cropped to hide Cassidy, making it look like Derek was simply buying investment property while his unstable wife threw a tantrum. But then I received a private message from Derek's cousin, Felix. We'd met once at a family wedding and had barely spoken since. "They're lying," his message read. "And my aunt knew about the affair for months. She helped him hide it from you. I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner. Called him immediately. Can you prove that? I have text messages between my aunt and Derek where she gives him advice about keeping you in the dark. She suggested he use your fund before you figured things out. I can send them if you want." "Please," I said, already opening my evidence folder. "Send everything." Within an hour, I had screenshots showing his mother had actively encouraged the theft and the affair. Another crack in their facade. Another piece of evidence for Mr. Holloway's growing file. Mr. Holloway called 2 days later with news that made my hands shake. "I've reviewed all the property documents filed with the county. The deed lists the owner as Kira Dalton. Not Derek Dalton. Not Derek and Cassidy. Just you." "That's impossible," I whispered. "How?" "The title company used the account information as the primary ownership indicator since your husband indicated this was your investment property being purchased on your behalf. He likely didn't realize they'd file it this way. Probably thought adding Cassidy's name as a co-owner would happen after closing. But it never did." He paused, and I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. "According to the current legal documentation, this is your house, Kira. Purchased with your money, titled in your name. They're living in property that belongs to you." I burst into tears. Not sad tears this time, but relief mixed with vindication and overwhelming gratitude for my father's foresight in putting that account solely in my name. "What happens now?" I asked when I could speak again. "Now we file a claim asserting your rightful ownership and demanding they vacate. We'll cite the fraud, the forged authorization, and the title documentation. We're in an incredibly strong legal position. Will they fight?" "Oh, they'll fight. But they're going to lose." For the first time since walking into that escrow office, I felt something like hope. Cassidy called me 3 days later, her voice shaking and high-pitched. No more smug confidence. No more designer-clad superiority. "You can't do this," she said without preamble. "That house was promised to me. Derek said we'd build our life there. Derek stole from me to buy it. That makes it legally mine. You're just doing this to punish us. You never even wanted that house until you knew we did." Kept my voice calm. "I want what belongs to me. The money that bought that house was mine. Therefore the house is mine. I gave up everything for him." Her voice cracked. "I left my job, I moved cities. He promised me stability and a future. You're destroying my entire life. He destroyed mine first. You helped him do it." She started crying, genuine sobs that might have moved me if she hadn't stood in my hallway 2 weeks ago bragging about pressuring Derek to steal my inheritance. "Please," she begged. "Please just let this go. We can work something out. I'll pay you back." "With what money?" "The money you pressured my husband to steal from me." She hung up. Hours later, she posted a long rant on social media calling me a jealous ex-wife, who was weaponizing the legal system to ruin innocent people's happiness. The post went semi-viral in local community groups. But then people started noticing inconsistencies in her story. And someone, I never found out who, leaked security footage from the escrow office showing the moment I'd walked in and seen them together. The footage spread faster than her lies. Comments shifted from supporting her to questioning everything. By evening she'd deleted all her posts, but the damage to her credibility was done. Derek appeared at my door at 2 in the morning, looking nothing like the confident man who'd sat in that escrow office. His hair was uncombed, shirt wrinkled, eyes red and wild. "We need to talk," he said when I opened the door a crack, chain lock still engaged. "About what?" "About fixing this situation." Kira, this has gotten out of control. Cassidy is having panic attacks. My mother won't stop calling. Everyone's threatening to sue each other. You stole from me, Derek. You forged my signature and used my father's money to buy a house with your mistress. There's nothing to fix. I never meant to hurt you. The words sounded hollow, rehearsed. I got caught up in the moment. Cassidy was pressuring me, and I made a mistake. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. This was calculated theft. He ran his hands through his hair, frustration bleeding into his voice. Look, if we work together we can still fix this and keep the house. We could sell it, split the profit, both move on. Wouldn't that be easier than dragging this through court? I stared at him, finally seeing him clearly. You want me to help you profit from stealing my inheritance? It doesn't have to be a war, Kira. We could handle this like adults. Get off my property, Derek. Just think about. I shut the door in his face and locked it. Through the wood, I heard him kick the frame once, then his footsteps retreating down the hallway. His mother called the next morning, her voice sharp and accusing. I just got off the phone with our family lawyer. He says you're claiming Derek trapped us by using your money. That's ridiculous. You let him manage the finances. I never gave him permission to touch my college fund. He forged authorization to access it. This is your fault for being careless with marital assets. Now you're trying to destroy my son because you're bitter about him finding someone who actually appreciates him. Her anger was so thick I almost missed it, the slight tremor underneath, the edge of fear creeping into her voice. She was scared. They were all starting to understand how much trouble they were in. Then, unexpectedly, Vanessa called on a different line. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Kira. Her voice was quiet, cautious. I need to tell you something, and I need you to not tell my mother I called. I'm listening. When Derek first mentioned Cassidy to the family about 8 months ago, my mother said she was glad. She said you were taking too long to give her grandchildren and that maybe someone younger would be more fertile. She's the one who introduced them, actually. At a family event you couldn't attend. My blood went cold. She set this up. She encouraged it. And when Derek said he wanted to use your fund, she told him it was smart planning. She said you'd be too heartbroken to fight back. I recorded every word, thanked her quietly, and added the call to my evidence file. Mr. Holloway brought in a forensic accountant named Ms. Chen, a small woman with sharp eyes who spent 3 days dissecting every financial transaction Derek had made in the past year. What she found was damning. A hidden joint account with Cassidy, opened 6 months before the house purchase. Regular hotel charges to the same luxury property downtown. Jewelry purchases that I'd never seen. Expensive dinners at restaurants he'd claimed were business meetings. And most importantly, digital signatures on the fund authorization that didn't quite match mine. The forensic analysis showed the signature had been copied from another document and digitally pasted onto the withdrawal form. This is textbook fraud, Ms. Chen said, sliding her report across Mr. Holloway's desk. He wasn't even careful about covering his tracks. The metadata shows the document was altered 2 days before submission. Mr. Holloway added everything to our expanding case file. We're not just proving ownership anymore, he said. We're building a criminal case. The prosecutor's office may want to get involved. Will Derek go to jail? Yes, possibly. Depends on whether they think it's worth pursuing charges. But even if they don't, this evidence makes our civil case unbeatable. I thought about Derek's face at my door. Desperate and manipulative. Do whatever needs to be done, I said. I want the truth on record, regardless of consequences. She cornered me in the grocery store on a Thursday evening. I was reaching for cereal when I felt someone move too close, invading my space intentionally. Cassidy stood there, her previous polish completely gone. No makeup, hair pulled back roughly, wearing sweatpants and fury. You won't win, she hissed, quiet enough that nearby shoppers couldn't hear. Derek is mine. That house is ours. You're just making this harder on yourself. I met her eyes calmly. The law disagrees with you. The law doesn't care about what's fair. You're weaponizing technicalities because you can't accept that he chose me. He didn't choose you, Cassidy. He stole from me to buy you. There's a difference. Her face flushed red. That house represents our future. Family. Everything we plan together. You're destroying lives out of spite. I don't want him, I said simply. I just want what's legally mine. She stepped closer, her voice rising slightly. If you think anyone will see you as the victim in this, you're delusional. You're the bitter ex-wife punishing people for being happy. Then you have nothing to worry about. Truth will come out in court. She opened her mouth to say more, then noticed the security camera positioned directly above us, red light blinking steadily. Her face went pale. She just threatened me on camera in a public place with witnesses nearby. She turned and rushed away, abandoning her shopping cart in the middle of the aisle. I calmly finished my shopping, then asked the store manager for a copy of the security footage, citing harassment concerns. He agreed immediately. 2 weeks later, Derek's family invited me to a peace dinner at his mother's house. The invitation came from Bridget, her tone conciliatory and warm. We've all said things in anger. Let's sit down like adults and find a solution that works for everyone. Every instinct told me it was a trap, but I wanted to see what they'd try. I agreed to come, but I kept my phone recording in my jacket pocket, the microphone unobstructed. The dinner table was set formally when I arrived. His mother at the head, both sisters flanking her, Derek conspicuously absent. They served wine and made small talk about weather and local news, the tension thick beneath their practiced smiles. Then his mother cleared her throat. Kira, we've all been thinking about this situation, and we believe there's been a misunderstanding. What misunderstanding? Ask carefully. Well, Vanessa jumped in. You've always been so supportive of Derek's decisions. We assumed you'd given permission for him to use the college fund for this investment opportunity. Didn't you? I saw the trap immediately. They wanted me to say yes, or even to hesitate in a way they could interpret as consent. No, I said clearly. I never gave Derek permission to access that account. He forged my signature to steal from me. Steal is such a strong word, his mother said smoothly. Perhaps you mentioned it casually and forgot. These things happen in marriages. Casual conversations about finances that get misremembered later. I have bank records proving I never authorized the withdrawal. Bridget tried next. But you trusted Derek with financial decisions generally, right? Maybe he misunderstood the extent of his access. I stayed silent, watching them scramble. Finally, his uncle spoke from the end of the table. His voice resigned. This is going to get ugly, isn't it? Derek's spiral was visible even from my distance. Felix kept me updated through occasional messages, not out of loyalty to me but because, as he put it, someone should document this disaster. Derek lost his job after the escrow office footage went viral. His employer cited ethical concerns and reputational damage in the termination letter. Cassidy, meanwhile, was pressuring him to propose, posting couple photos with captions about real commitment and showing the world our love. His mother blamed me for everything in increasingly unhinged social media posts. She claimed I was a vindictive witch who'd manipulated their entire family. But each post drove more people to ask questions, to look deeper, to find the truth behind her version. Then Derek sent me a final message, a long rambling text that arrived at 3 a.m. You're ruining all our lives. My career is gone. Cassidy won't stop crying. My mother is having health problems from the stress. My sisters won't speak to me. All because you couldn't just accept that I'd moved on. All because you had to be petty and vindictive. I hope you're satisfied with destroying everything. I read it once, then blocked his number. I didn't need his guilt trips or his attempts to reframe his theft as my fault. I was done carrying his emotional manipulation. Mr. Holloway called a week later with unexpected news. I found something interesting in your marriage paperwork. Do you remember signing a prenuptial agreement? I searched my memory. Vaguely. It was right before the wedding, and Derek's mother insisted. She said it was standard protection for both families. I was so stressed with wedding planning I barely read it. Your father added a clause. Look at Section 7, Paragraph 3. He read it aloud. Any misuse, theft, or unauthorized access of premarital funds or assets by either party immediately voids that party's rights to any property purchased with said funds. My father had protected me even from beyond the grave. That prenup was his idea. Asked, my voice breaking. According to the notes, yes. He specifically requested this clause be included, stating he wanted assurance that your college fund would remain inviolate regardless of marital circumstances. I sobbed into the phone, overwhelmed by grief and gratitude. My father had known. Maybe not about Derek specifically, but he'd known that my future needed protection. This clause makes our case ironclad, Mr. Holloway continued gently. Combined with everything else, Derek has no legal standing whatsoever. The house is yours, Kira. Completely and entirely yours. We filed the formal lawsuit the next day, citing fraud, theft, and breach of prenuptial agreement. The court date was set for 6 weeks out. The courtroom was more crowded than I'd expected. Family members lined the benches. His family on one side, my small group of supporters on the other. Strangers filled remaining seats, people who'd followed the viral footage and wanted to see how the real-life drama concluded. Derek sat with his lawyer at the defendant's table, refusing to look in my direction. Cassidy sat directly behind him, arms crossed, her expression cold and defensive. His mother dabbed at her eyes with tissues, performing grief for anyone watching. I sat beside Mr. Holloway, my hands folded calmly in my lap. I dressed professionally but not ostentatiously. Simple navy dress, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back. I wanted to look like someone seeking justice, not revenge. Judge Morrison entered and everyone stood. She was a woman in her late 50s with kind eyes that turned sharp when she reviewed paperwork. This is a civil case regarding property ownership, she began. Ms. Dalton claims sole ownership of property located at 2847 Riverside Drive based on fraudulent use of her personal funds. Mr. Dalton contests this claim, arguing marital property rights. We'll hear evidence from both sides, starting with the plaintiff. Mr. Holloway stood. Your Honor, the evidence will show that Mr. Dalton systematically defrauded Ms. Dalton by forging authorization to access her personal college fund, then used those stolen funds to purchase property with a third party. We have documentation, forensic analysis, and testimony supporting complete fraud. One by one, Mr. Holloway presented the evidence. First, the bank statements showing the account was in my name only, established by my father years before my marriage. Then, the forged withdrawal authorization with its telltale digital manipulation. The forensic accountant testified about the metadata, the copied signature, the timeline that proved premeditation. Ms. Chen presented the hidden joint account, the hotel receipts, the pattern of deception that went back months. Mr. Holloway played the recording of Cassidy bragging about pressuring Derek to use my stupid college fund. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Derek's face drained of color. Then came the email draft. Derek's own words about pushing me out once the house was secure, about calculating exactly how much pain to inflict for maximum efficiency. His lawyer tried objecting, claiming the laptop search was unauthorized. Mr. Holloway calmly noted it was marital property I'd had every right to access. The prenuptial agreement came next, that protective clause my father had insisted upon. Mr. Holloway read it clearly, then showed how Derek's actions explicitly violated every word. Finally, he presented the property deed itself, title listed as Kira Dalton, sole owner. The evidence is overwhelming, Your Honor, Mr. Holloway concluded. Ms. Dalton's money was stolen and used to purchase property fraudulently titled in her name. By law and logic, that property belongs to her alone. Derek's lawyer stood to present their defense, but it was weak. claims about misunderstandings and marital mismanagement that rang hollow against the mountain of evidence we'd provided. Then Cassidy snapped. She'd been sitting rigid through all the testimony, her face growing redder as each piece of evidence was revealed. When Mr. Holloway finished, she suddenly jumped to her feet, her voice shrill and desperate. "This is insane. He promised me everything. That house was supposed to be our beginning." The bailiff moved toward her, but she kept screaming. "You had him for 3 years and did nothing with him. I made him happy. I gave him a future. That house is mine." She grabbed her phone and threw it at Derek, hitting him in the shoulder. "You said this would be easy. You said she'd never fight back. You promised me." 2 bailiffs physically restrained her as she struggled, still screaming about promises and futures and betrayal. Judge Morrison's gavel cracked like thunder. "Remove her from my courtroom immediately, or I'll hold her in contempt." They dragged Cassidy out, her voice echoing down the hallway even after the doors closed. The courtroom sat in stunned silence. Derek had slumped in his chair, face buried in his hands. His mother wept openly. His sister stared at the floor. His lawyer looked like he wanted to disappear. Judge Morrison took a long breath. "We'll take a 15-minute recess." The break felt endless. When we reconvened, the judge's expression was stern. "I've reviewed all evidence presented, and I'm prepared to make my ruling." Judge Morrison's voice filled the silent courtroom. "This is one of the clearest cases of financial fraud I've encountered. The evidence shows systematic, premeditated theft of personal funds, followed by fraudulent property purchase with intent to defraud the rightful owner." She looked directly at Derek, her expression cold. "Mr. Dalton, your actions weren't mistakes or misunderstandings. They were calculated crimes against your spouse, committed with full knowledge and malicious intent." Derek's lawyer started to stand, but she held up a hand. "The prenuptial agreement explicitly voids your property rights upon misuse of Ms. Dalton's premarital assets. The forensic evidence proves you forged authorization to access those assets. The property deed lists Ms. Dalton as sole owner. And your own written words demonstrate intent to defraud." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "Therefore, by law and equity, I rule that the property located at 2847 Riverside Drive belongs solely and entirely to Ms. Kira Dalton. Mr. Dalton has 30 days to vacate and remove all personal belongings. Any damages to the property during that period will result in additional penalties." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Derek's mother let out a wail. Vanessa grabbed Bridget's hand. Derek himself collapsed forward onto the defense table, his shoulders shaking. "Furthermore," Judge Morrison continued, "I'm referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for possible criminal prosecution for fraud, forgery, and theft. This court is adjourned." The gavel fell with finality. I sat perfectly still, unable to process that it was over. That I'd won. That justice had actually prevailed. The 30 days passed in a blur. Derek moved out of the house. Our house, my house now, without speaking to me. His belongings disappeared gradually, picked up by his sisters while I was at work. I drove past the property twice during that month but didn't go inside. I wasn't ready yet to face the space he'd built for her using my stolen future. When the 30 days ended, Mr. Holloway met me at the house with the keys and final paperwork. "It's officially yours," he said, handing me the key ring. "The title has been updated, locks have been changed, and the property is now solely in your name with no encumbrances." I unlocked the door and stepped inside alone. The house was empty, echoing. They'd taken everything. Furniture, decorations, even light fixtures in some rooms. It felt like a shell, a hollow space waiting to be filled with meaning. But the bones were good. Large windows filled the rooms with light. The layout was practical and warm. The backyard had space for a garden. I walked through each room slowly, imagining not what Derek and Cassidy had planned, but what I could build. Not a monument to revenge, but a home for my future. The future my father had saved for. I hired a contractor the next day. We repainted every wall in colors I chose. Soft blues and warm grays, nothing like the harsh whites Derek preferred. I planted flowers in the garden, varieties my father had loved. I hung photos of Dad and me on the walls. Graduation, holidays, quiet moments of joy. I framed my acceptance letter to the graduate program, the one I'd re-enrolled in using scholarship money and grants after my stolen fund was never recovered as liquid assets. I hung it above my desk in the home office I'd created in what was supposed to be their master bedroom. The irony felt poetic. 6 months after the court ruling, Felix sent me a final update. Derek had moved back into his mother's cramped guest room after Cassidy left him. She'd apparently found someone else, someone with actual money and stability, and moved to another state without saying goodbye. Derek's family wasn't speaking to each other. Too much blame being passed around, too many accusations about who encouraged what. His mother's social media accounts had gone silent. The empire of lies had shattered itself from the inside, exactly as Mr. Holloway had predicted. As for me, I finished my first semester with perfect grades. I opened a small financial consulting business helping other people protect their assets and identify fraud, turning my painful experience into purpose. The house wasn't just shelter anymore. It was proof that truth could win over manipulation, that careful planning could defeat casual cruelty, that my father's love and foresight had protected me even after he was gone. Some evenings, I sat in the garden watching the sunset, surrounded by flowers Dad would have loved, living in a home built from justice rather than theft. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. My father's gift had ended up exactly where he meant it to be. With me. Shaping a future that no betrayal could take away.